And a pleasant good evening and welcome to Buffalo Wild Wings alongside Mike Pacheco and with women's coach Kevin Cook. I'm Dave Friedman. 34 days until Selection Sunday, and we are live from BW3's off Dave Lyle Boulevard in Rock Hill. If you want to send us questions for the coaches, please do so using hashtag WooCoaches on Twitter. That's hashtag WUCoaches. We're back here at BW3's next Monday. Great spot to grab a beer and some wings and talk some Winthrop basketball as we head down the stretch in the conference season. The women's team 13-10, 9-5 in the league. The men's team 13-10, 8-4 in the Big South. The women's team coming off a 57-54 win at Asheville on Saturday, and they take on High Point, last year's regular season champions, tomorrow at the Coliseum at 7 o'clock. There are tickets available. 323-2345, 323-2345, and online at winthropeagles.com.
But they're going fast. So
tickets are moving quickly. Coach, High Point comes to town. Obviously, it's a big game. We'll get to that in a bit. But the win against Asheville, sometimes you have to gut out road wins.
Absolutely. Any win is a beautiful win to us. I talked to some of the people that were there live and some of the people that watched it and some of the people that listened to it. And they said, oh, it was a kind of a sloppy game. I said, I didn't think so. I thought it was a beautiful game, especially when the buzzer went off. But you're right. You have to gut out some wins. Again, I thought we got off to an excellent start and then ran into some difficulty. They hit some shots, and we had spurts again in the second half where we could have went out comfortably, but that wasn't the case. And I know one thing, we're 5-0 in games decided by 3 points or less, and we're happy about that.
And you've won 5 of 6 overall, bringing you to the High Point game tomorrow night at the Coliseum. I know how disappointed you were with the loss to Campbell. Did you feel as though a lot of the things you worked on in practice you were able to put into play against Asheville?
Yes. We're continuing to work on our defense, and they're a very difficult team to defend with their dribble drive, motion offense, and it forces all 5 to defend on the perimeter, including Shaquilla Nunn, Erica Williams, Ezene and Bamalu. And, I think we're getting better defensively, and I think the shooting percentages and the play bears that to be true. So as long as we keep improving on the defensive end, I think we've got a chance to get to where we want to go.
And, of course, it was kind of a big weekend for the Eagles. You and Erica share the same birthday on Saturday, so that was really sweet. On Friday, one of our good Winthrop fans, Greg Willis, celebrated a birthday as well. The G-Man over here celebrated his big birthday. But when you look at Shaquilla Nunn, right now, 4th career in the Big South with block shots. She had 6 against Asheville. And when I talk to the opposing coaches before every game, one of the big keys for them is trying to figure out how to defend and how to work up against Shaquilla Nunn. How do you feel she played in the game? She had some tough minutes in that game, 10 points, 10 rebounds, but she kind of earned every point and every rebound and every block shot.
She sure did. I mean, they made her work for everything, as all teams make her work for everything. But I was interested to note that she may become the first 1,000-point scorer and rebounder in Winthrop basketball history, men or women. And I found that amazing, as many great players has come through. And, that would be special. Shaquilla is in the top 6 in the country in block shots. So I think when you talk to the opposing coaches, it shows that she can affect games on both ends. She struggled a little bit in the first half with a couple travel violations. Yeah. We talked at the half, her and I asked her to play power basketball. Don't go with the finesse move so much, just catch and turn and be powerful. And she did that. and had a little bit more success offensively in the second half.
A lot of teams are trying to collapse on her, maybe put 2 and 3 players and really make it tough for her to, once she gets the ball, to either go to the basket or try and pass. How do you kind of counter some of those moves that the teams that we're seeing against her?
A lot of breakdown work. We've been dividing the perimeter and the post more so lately and spending more time, on high-low situations with Quila, running 2 and 3 at her, simulate game situations so she can recognize the diagonal fan passes there, and just recognize and pick out who's opening, where the double downs are coming from.
I don't know that she gets enough credit for this, but when you look at maybe that 8-10 foot jumper that she's been working on, that the free throw line jumper as well, I mean, how important has that been in the maturation of her game?
Absolutely. The more weapons that you can add, the more dangerous you become. So she continues to add to her toolbox, and that's one of her keys. She's always striving to get better every day. She'll always look at more film. She's a player that always wants to look at the opponent's tendencies. She asks us to send her clips. She always wants to study. I mean, she puts the time in. She's like the great quarterbacks that you read about that prepare, the Peyton Mannings, the Bradys, with their maniacal approach to preparation. This is kind of how Quila is.
What is she looking for? Does the opponent go up over the left shoulder or the right shoulder? Or is it something defensively that she can take advantage of? What does she want to see?
That's an excellent question, and tendencies are one of the things that she looks at. And, she's such a shot blocker. She doesn't just study her assignment. She studies all 5, sometimes all 7 clips to see where she can help from. Now, at times she does overhelp. There's no doubt about that. But the way that she alters shots and effects, with the pink elephant, we can go ahead and forgive those overhelps. But I'm really proud of Quila, the way that she has worked on her game, the way that she's improved, and the kind of teammate that she has been. So I think you'll continue to see her improve and improve. And again, we've talked about her not really playing in earnest till her sophomore year, and then getting mop-up time behind number 1 team South Carolina's Ella Mebium, and finally playing a little bit her senior year, and then freshman of the year in the Big South. And so the improvement's been rapid, and it's because of her hard work.
Aaliyah Kilpatrick had a huge layup at the end of the game, I think with 18 seconds to go. Play before that, she was involved in a play down in the corner. Kind of got double teamed. You were trying to get a timeout called. Was that what you were trying to do before unfortunately, the Eagles had the possession arrow, so you got possession back after the ball got tied up?
Yeah, I think that the officials were so into the game, and my voice, isn't as strong as it used to be, so maybe they didn't hear me, maybe they didn't see, but thank goodness we had the possession arrow. And then when we inbounded, Quila came over and started to set ball screen, and I motioned as I watched the film. I was really demonstrative. I told her and Erica to clear. I said, clear, and Leah just rocked him to the hole and again made a game-winning play. Actually, it was like the 3rd or 4th time that she's done so this season, and she has a knack for that. And she's not a nervous Nelly. She's really a calm, cool, and collected. So happy that she's on our side.
Well, and defensively, sometimes when you see a player that has the ability to score like she does, maybe isn't as good on the defensive end, but she's one of the better defenders on the team.
You're exactly right. And it's amazing when we sit around and talk about defenders in our conference, and Kiara Gaines, is obviously a great defender from Campbell. But always in the conversation are Shaquila and Aaliyah. Both of them, could end up canceling each other out for Defensive Player of the Year. That's okay as long as we get Team of the Year.
When you look at your defense, you hold Asheville to only one double-figure scorer. Shatori Major came off the bench, had 15 points, but everybody else, including their leading scorer, Shanice Jones, held to single figures. I know that part of the game plan was to do some of those things, but how pleased were you with how your team played defensively?
Again, you know, as long as we're keeping teams under 60, we're going to have a fighting shot at winning the ball games, and that's what's buoyed, you know, our little streak that we've been on. What is it, 5 of 6 or something like that? And we're just focused on the next game, you know. And High Point, they average 68 a game, but they give up 66 a game. We played game 1 up there without Taylor Calvert, and so this is a team that we know very, very well. We feel that we're ready. We're happy that you know, we're pretty good at the Coliseum, and they're 4-9 on the road. So maybe the stars will align, and we know what a win means now. I'll say this and repeat it. Every conference game is the same, is weighted the same. There's not one that weighs more than the other. But because of this time in the season, a win will put us in a tie for second in the loss column. And, of course, our players know that, and High Point knows that.
What do you do at this stage of the game to – some teams maybe have the ability that you can lay a lot of that pressure on them. Some teams you might want to take a little bit of that off. How do you balance what you talk about as far as big picture when you're going down the key stretch like you're in right now?
Just keep it real. The players know there's so much out there now that they could almost do their own scouting reports if they wanted.
Sounds like Shaquila might take that role on.
Yeah, she does a great job of that. She really does. But go ahead. I lost my train of thought there.
That's quite all right. We'll let you have a moment here to collect your train of thought, because when we come back, we'll dig a little bit deeper into the matchup tomorrow, which will be against High Point. Of course, we welcome folks to come out. Now, the Eagles will be wearing their pink uniforms for the next 3 home games. The pink game will be next week. This will be the first in a series of 3 home games at home. So you can check out the Eagles wearing their pink uniforms. We'll be back here with Coach Cook. We're at Buffalo Wild Wings. This is the Winthrop Coaches Show, and you're listening to the Winthrop Sports Network. Welcome back to the Winthrop Coaches Show. I am Mike Pacheco, Dave Friedman alongside. Glad to be joined by women's basketball coach Kevin Cook. The Eagles 13-10 this year, 9-5 in conference play. Have a big game coming up. Well, they're all big down the stretch in conference play, but another conference game coming up tomorrow against High Point at 7 o'clock. We encourage everybody to come out. If you can't come out, you can watch us on the Big South Network. And High Point, this will be the second time the Eagles and the Panthers have faced each other. High Point winning last time, 81-55. When you kind of look back at that matchup, what do you remember from that first game? What did you see that maybe some of the things you want to try to keep an eye on for game 2 in the rematch here?
Was that a game or a track meet? I remember them busting out and us chasing them. Okay. It's one of those games, and we'll play better tomorrow. And that's what I remember, and what I recall is that we've totally a different team since that game. I mean, we've changed our defensive schemes and got some new sets in offensively, and of course they've evolved, and we know this team very well, and it's just going to be interesting. I wish we were tipping it off in a couple hours.
How much do you watch that first game and try to learn, and how much do you go, we're a different team, that wasn't our best game, let's move on?
Most of the time, it's a good question. Most of the time we watch it regardless. This game, I spent on their last 3 and 4 games, and because we're so different, and we feel pretty good about where we're at, and I think our players are ready for the test, and I know they're ready for the test, and so let's throw the ball in the air and let the best team win.
We've talked about how different your team is. How different? What are things are High Point doing differently than when you last saw them?
They're very balanced, and they have Ashante Richards at the point, and she's very capable. And then they bring Kayla Keys, the preseason player of the year in the Big South. They trot her out at the 2 guard. They have Latrice Phelps at the 4, and then at the 5, I think the heart and soul of their team, Stacia Robertson, and she's leading them in scoring and rebounding. So, those are the main leaders. They bring a good bench off. Deanisha Jackson is giving them some solid minutes. And what they score over 90 against Charleston Southern in their last time out, and their bench played a big part in that. And their coach has a lot of confidence in their bench, and so we'll see if we can cut into that a little bit.
You challenged your bench going into the last game against Asheville, saying that you wanted to see them step up, produce a little bit more, take a little bit of the heat off the starters, so minutes, but also from a production standpoint. How do you feel your team did that, and how important will the bench be in this game Tuesday?
The bench did step up in our last game. You didn't necessarily see their contributions in the box score, but for instance, Pamela played excellent 2 minutes. She delivered an assist on a key basket. That was something that we called during a timeout, and she executed it to perfection. So she helped us win a game. And normally you look down and see 1 assist in 2 minutes, she helped you win a game. Yeah, she was ready, she was locked in, she was engaged, and she went in and she contributed. And that's how important. You want to win by 15, 16, 20. That's nice. But most of these conference games are coming down to 2 and 3, 4 possessions. And it's the team that executes best on both ends of the court that's going to end up winning those games. We know that the 2 seed is still out there. And it's in. We control that destiny. We don't have to get any help. We handle our business and still earn the 2 seed, and that's what we're going for.
When you look down on the bench, obviously you hope a player, whether they're going to play for 10 minutes or 2 minutes, is ready to go. But do you do anything, whether it be in practice, before the game, at halftime, whether it be talking to a player or just an expectation that's known, so that when they come off the bench and they go in the game, even if it's only for a couple possessions, you know what they're going to give you?
Yes, and those kind of conversations take place daily. And remember, we talked last week about the bench and kind of realigning it, and that worked out very well. They are able to go in and talk to Coach Matthew before they went in, and then also afterward, and that was a great help. We moved Coach Hammy to the end of the bench, and she really anchored that, and Coach Liberty at the top, and everybody was in sync. And
what do those coaches do during the game? You're talking about where they're positioned, but what are their duties?
Well, they're all divided up, and those duties are divided up into one, alerting me of, I've got a pretty good handle on when the media timeout's coming, but I'm reminded of that, so I don't call a timeout when we got a media coming next 10 seconds. We've got coaches charting fouls, coaches in charge of matchups, which are very important now since we're predominantly a man team. We've got a coach even during the timeout watching the scores table to see who's checking in. So we're prepared. And every aspect of the game is divided up. We keep a combination sheet that we know what group is performing at the high level. In an instant, we can look down and see these 5 are producing more than another 5, and that's very valuable. So there's a plethora of things.
You were telling us before the show, very special guest will be in attendance tomorrow.
Yeah.
The all-time leading scorer in Winthrop women's basketball history, DeQuisha McClanahan, will be in town.
Yeah, I think you can arguably say the greatest women's player in the history of Winthrop will be at the game tomorrow, DeQuisha McClanahan. She came in to the office at about 4:15, 4:30 today with a great smile on her face, and I said, "Hey, we can break that 22 jersey out of the frame there. Probably still fits." She said, "Hey, I wish I could still play." And, she misses it, but she knew she knew it was a big game, and she wanted to be here and support, and that's pretty neat.
I know you've been a big proponent of trying to involve the alumni and not just the student body and the regular alumni, but the women's basketball alumni and having them around the program. How important is it when you try to grow that relationship with players that have played here before? And there's one record that's going to probably fall this year, and that's Ashley Fan in the career rebounding. Ashley's not too far from here, but I know you like to have the former players to be an influence for the current players.
Absolutely. That's a vital part of the program. And, I try to visit with them, during homecoming week. They come into practice. We visit with them as much as we can. Keep them involved, sending them emails and so forth. And it's always nice. But the longer you're here, the more you build up that rapport because you've actually coached them now. I tell stories to the alums, and a lot of times, they're surprised and they're happy with all the improvements that have been made. And that's a direct result of a progressive administration that we have. And, they're just really proud of what the program is doing now. And they're the trailblazers, and we're thankful for them. And we hope to build up their attendance even more at the games.
Will you have DeQuisha address the team?
I mentioned that, and she said, Coach Cook, I really don't think I want to do that. But, that would be pretty neat. But, of course, she'll come into the locker room. She agreed to that. And I don't want to put her on the spot, but I'm sure there'll be a couple players that look to her for a couple words of wisdom. And, she's been keeping an eye on Jamisha Banks, our young freshman, and noticed how her development's been coming along. So that's really neat for her to keep an eye on the heir apparent.
Well, how important is that? You and I are both parents. Sometimes you hear a lot of things from the immediate supervisor or the coaches, but how important is it to have like a DeQuisha come in and maybe echo what you're trying to say, but just because it comes from a different voice, maybe it has – I don't know if it sinks in or it just clicks, or there's a benefit to that.
There is just – you cannot place the value that it has because that's a peer.
Yeah.
And coming from a peer, it has such a great weight to it. And, you know, for instance, Samaya said just a couple words to Jamisha that turned her confidence around. And, you know, you wonder what you could have said that they said, but it was those couple words coming from a peer that made all the difference.
Before we flip the script and bring on Coach Kelsey, the #1 versus #2 matchup tonight, South Carolina and Connecticut. How much interest will you have in it? How closely will you watch it? Will you try to take anything out of it besides entertainment? And who you got?
Put me on the spot there, my man. I think it's going to be a great game. It's been built up for over a month on our women's side. And when you're involved in women's basketball and you have a #1 and #2 playing, there is great interest, and there's been a great buzz. And our team will gather as a group and watch it. They have great interest in it, and I think it could be anybody's ball game tonight. You know, I do have great interest, and as I told the staff, I do say this braggingly. I don't brag a whole lot, but I'm very proud of taking, even though it's an exhibition game, taking a team to Stores and eking out a win over Gino the Genius. And it was a sellout, even though it was an exhibition. And he did have 7 TV cameras around him after the game, even though it was an exhibition. So that guy is a rock star. I mean, he's the best. And so I think if our team watches it closely, they'll see some of the sets that UConn runs that we run, and that'll be very interesting to them, I think.
Well, that'll be coming up at 8 o'clock, but tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, it'll be Winthrop and High Point. Hope everybody can come out for that. Good luck tomorrow night, Coach.
Thank you very much. See you at the Coliseum.
All right, and we'll have Pat Kelsey coming up here, the men's basketball coach at Winthrop, as we continue along on the Winthrop Coaches Show here on the Winthrop Sports Network.
We're back at Buffalo Wild Wings. It's our Winthrop Basketball Coaches Show. We're here each week during the basketball season with women's coach Kevin Cook and now men's coach Pat Kelsey. You can send us questions for the coaches on Twitter using hashtag WooCoaches. That's hashtag WU coaches. Our next coaches show is next Monday, February 16th. But don't be a stranger out here at Buffalo Wild Wings. Wing Tuesday, Boneless Thursday, 65-cent wings. Happy hour Monday through Friday, 4 until 8. $3 domestics, $4 and $5 craft and imports. Come see our friends out here at Buffalo Wild Wings. The men's basketball team, 8-4 in the conference, 13-10 overall. Winners of 4 out of 5, and the team has been off since last Wednesday. They played 4 games in 8 days, 3 games in 5 days, and now it's been a little bit of a rest. I suspect that Coach Pat Kelsey hasn't rested a whole lot himself.
No, not very much, but none of us coaches do this time of year. It's sort of the life we've chosen. But first thing I want to do before they get home, my little girls had basketball practice at St. Anne's this evening, and they're in the car with Mom on the way home, and my little boy Johnny too. So as I tell them before every practice and every game, I don't care if the shots go in. I don't really care if you win or lose, but as long as you dive on every loose ball, Dad will be proud of you.
And hard hedge.
And hard hedge on ball screens. And they usually do. They almost always do that. And I'm really, really proud of them. And they work really hard. So I love you guys.
Well, you mentioned to me that you're coaching one of your daughter's teams kind of part-time.
A little bit. Yeah, I'm coaching sort of from the sideline a little bit. Probably just need to keep my mouth shut and just cheer for them and stuff.
Is that difficult?
Well, they're 7 and 6, so it's not exactly, they're not exactly going against the Princeton offense or anything like that at this point. But they have fun, which is the most important thing, and they hustle and they play hard. I
could see you going and scouting a.
Well, it was funny in Ruthie and Caroline's game on Friday, I believe it was. They were playing against a 7-year-old. That was the biggest 7-year-old I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, asked for her ID.
And the coach said, Ruthie, don't let him catch it. Sure enough, she face guarded him nose to nose and frustrated the heck out of him, and couldn't have been prouder.
Not a lot of analytics, though. No Ken Palm.
Not a lot of Ken Palm on the St. Anne's Church League, but it's fun to watch your kids play, and it's fun to see them have a smile on their face and compete. And, growing up, if I played poorly, I drove home with Mom, and if I played well, I drove home with Dad, because if you played poorly, Mom still took you to McDonald's for an ice cream afterwards.
Your team has been off for a week. You're now in this bizarre 7-way tie for first place at 8-4 in the conference. Obviously, you can't worry about what anybody else does, but what have you been able to do in the last week that maybe you don't get to do when you've got games every other day?
Well, rest, first of all, for our players. I think that's really important, and that was paramount coming out of that Liberty game when we played 4 games in 7 days. We talked about how late January and early February are sort of what coaches term the dog days, where the players don't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. They don't smell March Madness, and it's game after game, travel, prep, practice. And now we're sort of out of that. And I think our bye weekend, if you will, came at an opportune time, because I felt like our guys were a little beat up and a little fatigued. So we wanted to make sure that their bodies got refreshed. They got treatment, did a lot of cold tub treatments and rest. And obviously we practiced as well. You're able to go back and do some preseason stuff, kind of tighten up your sets, put some new type of stuff in, things that you can't do when all you're worrying about is preparation. So I think we use these days very, very wisely.
The men will be at High Point on Wednesday night, home for Gardner-Webb on Saturday. It's a 1 o'clock game at the Coliseum against the Running Bulldogs. It'll be our Military Appreciation Day, brought to you by Kangaroo Express. Current and former military and family members get free admission to the game. There'll be donations taken for Folds of Honor and lots of great stuff going on during Military Appreciation Day on Saturday. And there are tickets available, 323-2345, 323-2345, and online at winthropeagles.com.
And I know you said it as well, but huge game tomorrow night for our women's team. And, it's a home game. And any fans that are out there listening, I know you obviously heard Kevin talk about it a little bit ago during his talk, but we'd love a big crowd. Students, if you're out there listening, love a big student contingent for that game. Big time game. So I'm excited about it. Although obviously we're getting ready for our game on Wednesday, but a big game for the women. I'm excited for them.
Yep, the women host High Point tomorrow at 7. The men are at High Point on Wednesday at 7. And this is a Panther team that beat you in double overtime at the Coliseum early in the conference year. How is your team different today than it was the first time you played High Point?
Jeez. I think we've become a better rebounding team, and I think the numbers reflect that. We've put a lot more emphasis on it was an emphasis from day one, but obviously as the season went on, that was sort of our sore thumb, the wart on our defensive resume, if you will. And I think we've shored that up. We better, because in the last game, High Point had 18 offensive rebounds against us, which is paralyzing. You can't allow a good team to get that many. It was a double overtime game, but they had 80 field goal attempts, 80. And that's way too many, especially as efficient of an offensive team as they are.
John Brown had 28 of those field goal attempts. He's the best player in the league, the reigning conference player of the year, 18 points and 6 rebounds. And the first time you played him, it almost seemed as though you were kind of throwing some guys to the fire. I mean, Dubio KK had never seen John Brown before. Joey Lopez had never seen John Brown before. What might a little experience do to help them?
Yeah, I think going against him the first time is good. All they saw going into that first game is video and highlights and dunks and top 10 Sports Center type things. And, you can't help, but especially as a freshman watching that, be a little bit in awe. He's a phenomenal player. For lack of a better way to describe it, he's a beautiful basketball player. He's fun to watch. And but I think being out there and hand-to-hand combat with him is good. At the time, I think Tevin Prescott was out. He didn't play in that game. He had been injured and sat out for several games. And Doobie really hadn't come along, if you will, yet. And he was having some problems with his leg and having some health problems as well. So Joey Lopez started the game, and we weren't sure how much Doobie was going to be able to give us. And Joey poured his heart and soul into that game like he always does and gave us good minutes on him. I think Doobie did a phenomenal job on him. Xavier Cooks guarded him at times. I think Josh Davenport had a cup of coffee. You have to keep throwing bodies at him. And, he had 30 points, but it was on 26, 27 field goal attempts. And, I think we made him earn the baskets that he got. At the end of the day, I think they hurt us in transition on the glass mostly. And that was, at the end of the day, the story of the game.
Kind of a unique situation right now. 7 teams vying for first place. You're really focused on what you have to do on Wednesday. How much do you try to eliminate the noise and just say, this will all play itself out. Just concentrate on what we have coming up on Wednesday?
It's really what we do. I mean, it is. If you get caught up in the tiebreakers and how the tournament's going to unfold and the 7-way tie for first place, I mean, obviously we are excited about that. I mean, when you communicate with a recruit, you can tell them, you're in first place in mid-February. I mean, that's a really, really good thing. But we just worry about the team we're playing on Wednesday, and all of our attention goes to that. And as long as day in, day out, game in, game out, we focus on the next opponent at hand, everything else will take care of itself or not, one way or the other. But if you look too far behind, too far ahead, you trip over what's in front of you. I've said it a million times. So that's all we're worrying about is a very, very talented, a very offensive, efficient, very hard-playing High Point team on Wednesday.
You've gone back and reviewed the first High Point game. The numbers indicate 6 of 24 from outside the arc in that game. Were they good shots, or are those shots you would like to have back when you go back and look at what you took?
Well, I mean, I think you always credit your opponent. You credit High Point, and, they were a worthy opponent and guarded the heck out of us. And, we shot some contested shots and missed some that we normally make. But I felt like, I told our guys we could have been more dangerous on offense. And that's sort of the word that we've been using lately is we want to be dangerous in everything we do. We want our transition game to be dangerous. We want to be running at top speed to offense, getting to the deep corners, bigs threatening the rim, guards with the ball in transition, advancing the ball because the ball moves faster than your feet on the pass. And then running into our early offense in our set plays to be more dangerous. Make every screen a dangerous screen. If it's a ball screen, try to create a 2-on-1, then do what the game tells you. Throw the ball back, throw the ball forward, or use the ball screen to get into the paint. If it's an off-ball screen, set it harder, cut harder. make the defense have to react to our offense instead of sometimes I feel like we mistake activity for achievement. And we'll run a set play and we'll run a pattern, but it looks good, but it's not dangerous. We're not getting anything out of it. And we said that coming out of the High Point game several weeks ago, and it's been something that we've been emphasizing ever since. If we don't make what we do dangerous, it's almost like you're just playing open gym. And obviously you don't want to play that way on the offensive end.
When you say make yourself dangerous, is that set plays? Is that the motion offense?
It's what I was saying. I think it's everything. I think being dangerous in transition is playing downhill and making them panic in the first 6 or 7 seconds of the shot clock. In a set play, it's making sure your screening action is dangerous. In the course of, sort of our play after the play, our motion with our ball screen game, it's making sure that on every ball screen, you're taking advantage of it. A ball screen is when a post player runs out and sets an on-ball pick on the guy guarding the ball. And if the handler doesn't wait on that screen, then the big doesn't need to hedge defensively, and the handler, is guarded by the guy that's guarding him. You get nothing out of it. In layman's terms, it's superfluous. The screen doesn't matter. And what I'm saying is every time we have an action, whether it's an on-ball screen, an off-ball screen, is we've been telling our guys to make sure it's effective or dangerous, as we like to say.
If you watch a basketball game, whether it's on TV or a game you attend, whether it's a Winthrop game or anybody else, you see a million ball screens. And we don't connect your team or any other team on every single one of them. What is a high grade? What percentage of ball screens should be effective?
Well, hopefully every single one. If there's one that's not, we're not executing properly. It's not a dangerous ball screen. The handler has to be a threat. He has to be a threat either to what we call reject the screen and drive away from it, or use it. And when you use it, you force the defense into into a strategy, a decision. How are you going to guard it? Are you going to try to just let the handler guard it and not hedge with the big? Well, what you would like to have happen then is your guards get in the lane. And when your guards get in the lane, good things happen. You want shots in the paint. When you get in the paint and people help up, you drop off for easy baskets or you spray out for threes. If they decide to hedge, so people are listening out there, a hedge would almost be a double team. It would almost be a trap on the ball. And when that happens, you have a 2-on-1. So you have a 4-on-3 on the backside of that ball screen, and the game tells you to make the right play, throw out of it, whether it's throw to the roll man on the pick and roll or throw back to what we call the trade man. And it's things we work on every single day. But if you don't make all your reads and make sure your action is run hard and executed properly, the defense doesn't have to react, and the ball screen doesn't matter.
Before we take our final break, if it were as simple as you just said, every time you made the right decision, you'd be scoring layups and open threes and every time. How much of it comes down to the decision-making of your player? Okay, you're in the situation. Now, do you take the guy off the bounce? Do you pitch it back to the guy at the three-point line? Do you dump it down to a roller? How much is it not the execution of the screen, but the thought of, okay, here's what happened. What should I do?
I think it's both. I think the execution of the screen, we're talking about on-ball screens. I know this is very technical, but you could be talking about an off-ball screen as well, a screen for a cutter. And I think it starts with the execution of the screen, and then it's up to your players to make the decision on what to do. If it's an off-ball screen and the defender goes under, then you pop back. And, there's the execution, then there's the decision. But then you have to take into account you have well-coached defensive teams that are defending your actions. So it's not like every time you do something, it's going to work, because teams practice every single day. We take pride in our defense, and we know what High Point's going to do, and we're trying to take them out of what they want to do, and they're trying to exploit us on what they want to do. And that's what's cool about basketball, the X's and O's and the strategy and the competitive nature of each and every game.
And that'll conclude our Screening 101 portion of our Winthrop Coaches Show live from Buffalo Wild Wings. We have much more to come on the Winthrop Sports Network. Welcome back to Buffalo Wild Wings. It's our Winthrop Basketball Coaches Show. We're here once a week during a hoop season. We're 34 days until Selection Sunday, 22 days until the start of the Big South Conference Tournament. We're back here at BW3's next Monday. The women's team is home tomorrow night for High Point at 7. The men's team home for Gardner-Webb Saturday at 1. The men's team are at High Point Wednesday night, 2 nights from now, 7 o'clock at the Millis Center. We didn't talk because we talked to Associate Head Coach Mark Prosser last Thursday about your most recent games, back-to-back wins over Charleston Southern and Liberty, and you won those games convincingly. What is the difference between the beginning of the year when there were all of those really tight games and now when you've had a lead, you have found a way to hold it and even up the lead? Is that maturity?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a function of us getting better. I think we're getting better. We have I think our kids are playing with more confidence. We have a really good chemistry about us. I think the kids feel good about where we're at and possibilities of the next month and a half. So I think it's a function of just getting better, and whether it's in situations, whether it's in executing, I just feel like as a team we've grown.
Before Dave asks about European cuts and drop steps,
I'm looking around. I think we put everybody in this restaurant asleep through the 8-minute screening tutorial that we just did. So I apologize.
You want to win every game. That's obviously the goal. That winning breeds a whole different set of positive contributions. But when you go through a lot of those close games, I mean, how much do you have to sometimes go through those, peaks and valleys to get to where you want to go later in the year?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, the growth process. And I think the best experience you can have is trial by fire. And, that we're playing, especially early on, and even now, a lot of freshmen and a lot of guys that don't have a lot of experience. And we talked about the experience of guarding John Brown and how that hopefully is going to help us on Wednesday. But I think being in those tight spots and those close games and those situations in real games that mean something can only help you. And, we said it back several weeks ago when we were going through those tight games that it was going to help us late in the year and into tournament, and I feel like that'll be the case.
Speaking of those young guys, Xavier Cooks, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 5 blocks, 3 assists, 3 steals, 4 of 4 at the line in that game.
I think he sold hot dogs and shook hands and kissed some babies and took tickets too.
He's just off the pace to set the Winthrop freshman rebounding record. He's on pace to set the school mark for block shots as a freshman. The way he's come along, is it confidence? Is it skill learning? Like what has gone from the first handful of games where he was a bit player and he was productive, but not massively so?
I think it's confidence. He's a very, very skilled young man, and he was skilled when he got here. And he's a very high IQ basketball player, and he was that way when he got here. I felt like, and I think this is the case sometimes with kids that are from overseas and, from Australia, which is completely the other side of the world. It's a huge adjustment. Culturally, it's a big adjustment. It's adjustment to college, to school, to the academic course load. And then the way that we play and the way we practice and the way we lift might be different than what he's used to. He met new friends that don't speak the same way that he does. And it's just different. And I felt like it took a while for him to adjust, and he's adjusted now. He's very, very comfortable here. He's very popular on the team. He's got close friends, and the guys like him. And then I felt like when basketball started, he was out of sorts as well. It was different. I sound different. I probably yell a little bit more than what he's used to. I don't know. And he was just content standing in the back. In practice, we let guys sub in themselves. If you want to get in, get in. And I would look over, or I would say this if he's sitting here right now, and he would kind of be sitting back there and content letting other guys be out there getting reps. And I would have to, and I usually don't do this, I would have to say, get in there. I would have to force him to get in. And I don't have to do that anymore. And I even felt early on there were some times in games where he looked out of sorts and he felt uncomfortable. And he would even say, Coach, I don't think I'm playing very well. You should put somebody else in, basically. I'd say, you're playing. Stay in there, and I feel like that confidence that we gave him as a staff has helped. because he knows that you don't look over your shoulder. Don't look at me. You're playing through mistakes. And the game has slowed down to him a little bit. He's comfortable culturally. He's comfortable on the floor. And now everybody's starting to see his talent start to shine. And he's an unbelievably talented kid. And he's going to have a great, great career here.
I know we've alluded to it before. He's from New South Wales, Australia. He came to the U.S. and visited Hartford. He was never on the campus.
I've been to Hartford.
Yeah, I've been there too. And he signed having never been to the Coliseum, never been to campus. Can you explain how that all came to be?
Well, I think, when he went on his first visit, he wasn't convinced.
Yeah. And
he wasn't sure. And he was all, it's a major, major deal to get over here,
yeah,
as you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, and I don't think he wanted to take, another visit. He was anxious to decide what his future was going to be. So there were several schools still involved that were in, contention for getting him. And you had, in today's day and age, you can recruit like that a little bit just because of Skype and FaceTime and, things like that. And he sort of went through the recruiting process,
virtually
from 10,000 miles away or however many miles it was. But, there was a ton of relationship building, not only from us, but from the other schools that were recruiting him. I knew a lot of people that knew him, that knew his family, and obviously they spoke very, very highly of us. They're a great family, a loving family. They really, really, really do their homework, and they dove into the details of each of the schools and the staffs and the personalities and the players, did a ton of research on us. And at the end of the day, I think they made a very, very informed decision, but they made a gut decision as well, and they went with where they felt most comfortable, and it worked out.
You're one of 8 Big South teams. One of 7 at 8-4, tied for first place with 6 other squads. In order to win the regular season title, you're probably going to have to go 5-1. Now, I know you're looking at one game at a time, but throughout the year, Keon Moore's numbers have just been through the roof. Does he have to lead this team if you're going to get 5 out of 6, if you're going to win a regular season title?
Does he have to lead our team? Well, I mean, I would say we have a lot of really good players, but he's, he's our best player. And you need your best player to be, really good down the stretch and in big games. And you know what? He always is. He's not perfect, but, he's got to finish strong. But we need – it's amazing to see Andre Smith come along. And everybody's been talking about early on his shooting woes and the ball wasn't going in. You are who you are on the back of your bubblegum card. And the back of his bubblegum card says he's a phenomenal shooter. He's a 40% plus three-point shooter. And law of averages works out. You look at how that cat's shooting the ball now. I mean, he's shooting it at an elite level. So you see him coming on. Keon Moore doesn't have to do it all by himself. You see, the potential of what Keon Johnson's done throughout his career and in big moments. And we're, anticipating him really, really coming on and playing well, very, very well down the stretch as well. Xavier Cooks is coming on. Dubio KK. It's what you want at this time of the year. Guys are starting to play their best basketball at the right time of year. And that's happening all over the league. And I think that's what's going to make for an unbelievable finish and an unbelievable tournament. Teams are playing their best basketball at the right time of the year. And if you're a fan of the Big South and you're a fan of Winthrop, and it's going to be, it's an exciting time.
The legendary North Carolina basketball coach Dean Smith passed away this weekend. Did you know him?
I didn't know him, but Coach Prosser was a huge, huge, huge fan of Coach Smith. And Coach Smith was nice enough to let Coach Prosser and his assistants when he was at Wheeling Central Catholic High School in West Virginia, when he was at Xavier, and then when he was when he was at Wake Forest, obviously, because of the competitive of the ACC, but he would go down and watch Coach Smith's practices. And in a way, I'm sort of a product a little bit of Coach Smith, because so many of Coach Prosser's idiosyncrasies, if you will, or detail-oriented way with which he coached and prepared practice, and little things like pointing to the passer, that's a Dean Smith thing. And it was a Coach Prosser thing because it was a Dean Smith thing. And it's a Pat Kelsey thing because it was a Skip Prosser thing, and it was a Dean Smith thing. And huddling before free throws. And little things like that, the detail with which Coach Smith would do his practice plans. That's how Coach Prosser was, and that's how I am. So he's one of the greatest coaches in the history of our country in any sport, but especially in basketball. And you see the ripple effect that he had. I never met him. I'm not a Carolina guy, but there's things that I do because of Coach Smith, because of Coach Prosser was such a fan of his.
In just maybe 30 seconds or so as we wrap up the program, we know the impact he's had because we've seen lots of tributes and we've read a lot in the last couple of days. But from an X's and O's standpoint, what was Dean Smith basketball?
Well, you know, there's a Carolina way, you know, and Roy Williams took it to Kansas and he brought it back to Carolina with him. So it's a little bit of a do what we do. It's different than what I do, but it's a do what Carolina does. And I think that's what all the great programs have. They have something that they hang their hat on. And, you know, the way that Carolina plays is there's an identity to that. But I think the greatest legacy that Coach Smith left is the class individual that he was and the way that he lived his life and the way that he treated people. And it's a great example for all of us, not only coaches, but everybody in the world.
That's Winthrop men's basketball coach Pat Kelsey. His team will be back in action at High Point Wednesday at 7. Home for Gardner-Webb Saturday at 1. The women's team is home tomorrow against High Point at 7. Tickets 803-323-2345. For Kevin Cook and Pat Kelsey, for Mike Pacheco and Austin Peak, I'm Dave Friedman. Our next show from Buffalo Wild Wings next Monday. We'll talk to you then on the Winthrop Sports Network.